Both Presidents Kennedy and Reagan, adamant Cold Warriors both, none would be accused of being friends to the Russians, always maintained open communication with the leaders of Russia to avoid escalation into nuclear conflict. Instead, our present-day leaders refuse diplomacy and push the war forward to the last Ukrainian standing, not for the benefit of the people of Ukraine, but to bleed the Russians dry, as in Afghanistan throughout the 1980s. This posture isn't for the Ukrainian people. This isn't for the American people. This is for the empire that now stands in the place of our once proud republic on a mountain of corpses to maintain global hegemony. That's why in 2014, then Vice President Joe Biden oversaw the overthrow of the democratically elected president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych. His crime was not signing a trade deal with the European Union. In actuality, he wanted to sign 2 trade deals with both Russia and the West. But when the EU agreement suddenly prohibited any economic agreement with Russia, Yanukovych says he felt like a bride who showed up for a wedding only to discover a never-before-discussed prenuptial agreement, and he just wasn't in the mood anymore. For that, he was regime changed. And if you doubt Washington, D.C. had anything to do with it, I have a bridge to sell you in Libya. Thanks to leaked phone calls, we know for a fact that the current Undersecretary of State, Victoria Nuland, personally handpicked the leaders of the new government to replace Yanukovych. You can hear the phone call in her own voice as she speaks with the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine about who is in and who is out in the new Ukrainian regime to make the whole thing stick. Is this what democracy looks like? I don't think so. And after the coup, the new government, urged on by local neo-Nazi groups like the Azov Battalion, and when I say neo-Nazi groups, I don't mean in the parlance that's often thrown around today. I mean actual Adolf Hitler-loving neo-Nazis who welcomed the German invasion during World War II. They urged the government and succeeded in banning the speaking of Russian and launching an ethnic cleansing campaign in the eastern regions of Ukraine. Russia responded, yes, by annexing the Crimean Peninsula to maintain control of the Sevastopol naval base, Russia's only warm water port with access to the Black Sea, which is a sort of Russian Alamo after many died defending it against German invasion in World War II. Whatever we think of that, it is of such strategic and nationalistic importance to the Russians. We better be prepared for nuclear war if we want them to give that up, because they're not going to give that up. But at the same time, he rejected petitions from ethnically Russian people in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine, now at the center of the war, who wanted to secede and join Russia. But over the next 8 years, a civil war raged in these separatist regions. Our own government funneled weapons into the conflict. In 2016, I represented Maine on the National Platform Committee of my political party, along with our colleague, Senator Guerin of Penobscot County. At the time, I was shocked to read calls for sending these weapons into this civil war halfway across the world. That's why I opposed that language and fought to strike it from the document, warning that these policies could escalate into a nuclear conflict. And 7 years later, here we are, living under the shadow of it all. These are only some of the most significant provocations: NATO expansion, deposing a democratically elected government, funneling weapons into a civil war on Russia's border. I haven't even mentioned the torn-up nuclear treaties and the years of domestic anti-Russian propaganda pushed onto the American people through an unholy alliance between U.S. intelligence agencies and the corporate press. Do you all remember that report that Vladimir Putin was putting bounties on U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan? That story was as false as the reports of Iraqi soldiers ripping Kuwaiti babies from incubators in the lead-up to Desert Storm. Pure war propaganda. It was completely debunked. This disinformation was planted in the media by, quote, anonymous intelligence officials in the lead-up to a major U.S. election. But if you ever read a retraction, you were lucky to find it on page 36 after months of front-page coverage. That's how war propaganda works with the war machine. Lie, rinse, repeat, and never apologize.